Paysafe. So maybe, I know you can talk about it for a long time, you're very proud of it, but give us a bit of a sense of the company.
Sure. Before I go into Paysafe, I'll just 2 seconds about myself to give some background on my framework and perspective on things. I started out my career as an accountant. I then went on to start 4 companies. So very much an entrepreneurial spirit in what I do. I like building organizations. We then moved into a very large company and got acquired by a company called FIS, which is one of the largest FinTech organizations in the world. And then from there came to Paysafe. So Paysafe is a company that is also a global company, serves over 100 different countries. We started out in Europe with the eCash network, and then we grew to include merchant acquiring in North America. So a significant company in the financial services space, and very excited about being here today.
When we spoke yesterday, you talked a lot about collaboration and industry collaboration. Do you want to maybe just set out a little bit how you see that collaboration within the ecosystem that you know well, within the payment space?
Yeah, so I think one of the great things about the meetings like this are bringing both business leaders, regulators, politicians all in one room. Having dialogue is really important, and these are great opportunities for people to understand what the issues are, talk through things that are emerging at a very fast pace, and what the repercussions are as we make laws or regulatory changes, or apply technology in new and exciting ways for, at the end of the day, consumers to kind of live better lives. So really, at the end of the day, collaboration is very important as we try to figure out the evolving needs of consumers and applying new and unique technologies.
I mean, you mentioned consumers because ultimately you're there to serve customers and consumers. How do you see their behavior change and through technology and technology change their behavior? I don't know what is the cause and which is the effect, but how do you see kind of your customer base evolving?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think as we, historically, as I looked at technologies emerging, it was really about people trying to maximize their financial assets in their daily life. And as technology continues to evolve, I think that theme still remains the same. It's really about reducing friction. At the end of the day, the industry is really based on trust. And so whatever we do, we have to figure out how to maintain that trust with consumers. If we can do that, then everything generally, the tide rises for all the participants in the ecosystem. So for us, it's really about the adoption of technology. It's the evolution of trying to personalize services for consumers, maintaining the trust with those consumers so that they can thrive and feel more confident in leveraging the technology that's out there. And for all companies, that's really the key to success, is if you can figure out how to leverage the technology to become more efficient, create personalized services, and build trust with your consumers, that goes a long way to a very successful relationship in industry.
And how do you see the evolution of artificial intelligence in your sector? The commissioner referred to its benefits for fraud prevention and other tools. How do you see the rollout or adoption of AI across your company and the sector at large?
So, as probably everyone knows, AI has been around for quite a while in a variety of iterations, and it continues to iterate very quickly. I think just in the last 48 hours, you saw O3 Mini get released and O3 Mini High get released, and so you're seeing an industry which really talks about the speed of evolution of change play out right in front of us. And so it's iterating very quickly. Obviously, DeepSeek was a very interesting release just a couple weeks ago. It really transformed a lot that was going on. When we look at AI, we have participated in a number of initiatives over the last few years, largely around back office functions, trying to gain efficiency with how we interact and improve the interaction for consumers as they call in, or merchants as they call in. We also do quite a bit around fraud and risk mitigation. And so as tools continue to evolve, as our data sets become more usable for us to predict fraud, these are all great outcomes for everybody involved, right? The more proactive we can become on behalf of the consumer by leveraging these tools, the better experience it is for the consumer and for the company itself. So AI is really, we probably have today, at any given point in time, we probably have 100 different AI projects that are underway and in flight throughout the organization. But I would say so far, most of them have been really around the back office efficiency gains. I think what you'll start to see more and more, and you're seeing it now emerge, is really integrating AI into the products. As the commissioner alluded to, you're starting to see more and more products about financial advice and the evolution of personalization for consumers. And I think you'll see a proliferation of that as we move forward over the next couple of years.
I mean, and as a CEO of a global company, do you see differences in the ability for you to roll out or apply AI in Europe compared to the US, for example, or Asia? There's always been this debate that Europe has a stricter regulatory framework or data privacy rules that prevent the rollout of AI products. Do you look at it from a regional perspective or really as a global challenge?
So that is a great question, Nick. And so we, as I mentioned, we're a global company doing business in over 100 countries. The way we're organized, just practically, is we operate as a global entity. There's one centralized product organization. There's one kind of go-to-market structure. And so for us, we are operating and building new product at a global purview because we don't service just one particular country. And so for us, as we go through that evolution of product creation, it's more around we start with the consumer or we start with the merchant. We're trying to solve a problem that they have. And then as we're progressing through, we go through the regulatory frameworks for each country as we're launching to make sure that we're in compliance with those. As we get more sophisticated, we'll be building more processes around how do we launch things so that we can kind of do it in an automated fashion and still stay in compliance with the local laws and regulatory frameworks. But it does add a lot of complexity as you try to drive more efficiencies into the organization. We talked a little bit yesterday just about data centers and moving to the cloud. And if you're a cloud native organization, how do you deal with data sovereignty and the various data issues? And so it adds a lot of complexity for companies that are operate on a global basis, dealing with the local regulatory frameworks.
You touched a little bit on some of the benefits of AI, but of course, many people in the room here are regulators and supervisors who are more worried about the risks.
Yeah.
They wake up worrying about the next risk rather than about the next opportunity. So how do you view potential risks in this area, and how do you deal or manage those potential risks?
I think it's a very valid concern, right? I think that for me, the way I look at the risks around what we're trying to do is trying to leave nobody behind, right? I think the frameworks that we're putting in are very, very important. It's easy for someone to come out with a new AI solution that says this person should get credit or shouldn't get credit. but it's very important to have a framework of what to do if the people don't get credit, and how do we keep them in the financial ecosystem. At the end of the day, it's really about everyone doing better and everyone doing well, and no one being left behind. So these changes in regulatory framework are very important to mitigate the risk that someone is left outside of the financial ecosystem. And so for us, it really, the collaboration of being here and being able to talk to people about what their thoughts are about the risk and how do we mitigate those risks are very, very important. It's also important as we're trying to navigate those risks that we really think through what the exposure of that risk is, and how do we deal with that. So for us, it's something that's on the forefront of our mind as we start building our products. But again, what we're trying to do may be very commercially centric, but it is a fundamental belief for us that creating trust and creating opportunities for people to stay in the financial ecosystem are very important. And keep in mind, largely what we do is that conversion from cash to digital framework. So we're very much a player in the lower end of the financial ecosystem.
Yeah, I think you alluded to the point of financial inclusion and the risk AI could bring to financial inclusion. Do you want to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more? You yesterday when we spoke mentioned, for example, payday loans and what happened in the US through the regulatory framework, taking it just as an example.
Yeah, I think that was a great, for me, an example years ago is in the U.S. as we moved away from payday lending, and it didn't solve the problem. So while it solved the problem for the regulator, it didn't solve the problem for the consumer. While they pushed the consumer, the average demographic was a middle-aged female that have children that were using the payday lending program, and she still needed to cash a check. She needed access to funds. That was still very important to her. And what we did with that regulation is we pushed them back into the back office of the small business who was doing the lending out of the back of the office. So we pushed them into a framework that wasn't as conducive, pushed them into a framework that extended rates that were probably not in the best interest of the consumer. So it is important, again, just as we're talking through, that everybody understands what we're trying to accomplish, and how do we make sure that even the regulation doesn't adversely impact the consumer at the end of the day.
So regulation is very important for you as for everyone working in a highly regulated sector. So what are your views on regulation? What would you like to see as a business person globally, but specifically in Europe around the regulatory framework?
Well, I think what you're doing here is really important. So for me, and throughout my career, we started two associations much under the guise of this, of bringing people together, not so much to kind of influence where things are going, but to make sure that everybody understood what was at stake when we made a decision and how we executed it. So very grateful for organizations like this that have the opportunity to bring people together, explore kind of all the possibilities that are out there, and go into things with eyes wide open as far as what we're doing collectively. You can't stop the innovation that's happening. It's going to iterate at a very, very quick pace. And I understand, coming from more of an entrepreneurial background, my bias is to continue to evolve. And that's one of the great things of the FinTech industry is you're really only limited by your own creativity as far as what you can develop. And there's such a need for people to operate at a faster pace, have the flexibility, the portability of their accounts, to move their financial relationships as they see fit, and that's really what you're seeing. The friction that's evolving in the system is the technology is out there in front, leading a lot of this change and innovation. But as you say, collectively we have to make sure that we do it safely and we do it in a manner that allows for no one to be left behind the financial ecosystem.
I mean, it's interesting. You talk about the power of technology and how it speeds up decision making and possibilities. You mentioned at the beginning, we talked about AI, that literally every day you now have a new development. It's coming so fast that it's very hard to follow. How do policymakers respond to that, or how should they respond to just the speed and pace of innovation and change?
We see it with our regulators. We see a lot of interaction, which is very helpful. I think the more frequent the regulators are engaged in talking about what's happening within companies and the innovation, I think having those open dialogues is really important, so that everybody stays kind of in sync with each other as they're moving forward. I would also encourage somehow the industry as a whole to collaborate more. There's certainly around fraud topics and those type of issues. There needs to be more collaboration with the FinTech organizations and the financial institutions and the regulators. I often, as things emerge, the practicality of it is that you often hear the phrases of, I can't share that information with you, but we know this is happening. And we're all trying to solve for the same problem. We need less of those type of conversations and more of, let's get in a room and figure out how we solve this problem. If you have information that I don't, let's make sure we can share that information so we can provide a very safe framework for people to operate and execute their financial transactions.
A few years back, you worked with Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan on an idea of improving the anti-money laundering exchange of information framework globally. Maybe talk a bit about that and the learnings you've drawn from that for international cooperation versus regional cooperation.
Yeah, years ago, the World Economic Forum had come together and they were trying to solve for kind of a unified AML global framework. It was an interesting education coming into to that. What I would quickly got to the point of there was no way we were going to come up with one framework that was going to work globally. There was just too many competing interests that were going on and people managing AML for different reasons across the globe. So that led me to the creation of an association where we brought together just a couple of countries, and we said, okay, let's with P20, and what we tried to do is bring the business leaders, the senior executives, C-suite people together with the regulators and politicians to talk about if we could get these countries working together that generally work well together and generally see things in a very similar way, maybe there would be the opportunity to kind of expand and have a fast follow-on from there. It's been very productive over the last decade, seeing those things evolve, and there's been lots of great collaboration across regulators from Europe and the US. So it's been really rewarding to see that continue to evolve. I don't know that we'll ever get to a unified framework, but there's definitely, if you look at over the last 10 years, there's just been a tremendous amount of positive progress for the financial ecosystem from a regulatory standpoint and with collaboration of the business leaders.
One final issue I want to come to is quantum computing. If we had more than a day, I think we certainly would have had a session specifically on quantum computing. But how do you see that evolve, and how will that transform the financial services industry and be yet another step change to AI, what we've just been discussing?
Yeah, big fan of quantum computing. So this is something layered in with large language models and AI that will really drive a significant escalation in speed of evolution of financial services and products. So for us, it's something that we've partnered with Unisys and a handful of others to really try to get out in front of as this is emerging. But I think quantum computing absolutely will have a material impact for the financial services industry as we all move forward. I think the challenge is going to be the pace of change. I think for everybody, things are going to open up in a very dramatic way as far as what is people technically capable of doing, and I think that's going to create a lot of change for regulators as they're trying to deal with this new influx of technology, and again, making sure that the financial ecosystem is sound, financial ecosystem maintains that underlying trust that consumers need to feel comfortable executing commerce. So it's a wild west when we start thinking about quantum computing.
Yeah, one thing you said yesterday that scared me a bit is that quantum computing is very good in supporting encryption, but it's equally good in breaking encryption. So it'd be an interesting race.
I think all of that will evolve very quickly, right? So it's easy. I was at an event and Larry Fink from BlackRock was talking about the changes of quantum computing and what was going to happen there around encryption. But yes, encryption, everything is moving. So there's not one thing that's just standing still. So there's a lot of positive innovation that's happening that will leverage quantum computing and large AI models. There's also bad things that will keep moving too. So if very much the iteration game and the cat and mouse game of technology will really go into hyperdrive as we start unleashing these new technologies.
Thank you. Maybe one very last thought, which is you've come to Europe from the US. How do you see European competitiveness? Because at the moment we have in this self-reflection exercise here about our future competitiveness.
There's it's an interesting thought, right? So obviously saw the Commission's AI agent get released, and there was a lot of fanfare around that. I think for me, what I would say is it's difficult it's not an apples to apples comparison necessarily. The way the European marketplace is driving different things, different outcomes than kind of the US model is, which is a ultra competitive, solve a technical problem and deliver a commercial solution to market. And here there's more energy around the safety side of the business. So I think when you start lining up the apple-to-apple comparison, there is a heavier regulatory framework in Europe, and it just creates more creativity around how do you solve for that. But it is a pretty staggering number to look at a $54 million spend versus Trump's announcement of $500 billion spend. So they can't obviously be talking about the same things, right? So it's a very different environment.
Thank you very much indeed. Maybe for spending the time with us, maybe I can ask everybody to thank Bruce for this very interesting conversation. And also